so that we can have that kind of a long-term result here in the community.
At a high level, how's the total tax levy funded? Is that property taxes, or is there anything else how it gets funded?
Yeah, we're talking property taxes
So it's
here.
100% property tax, whatever's that bill goes in that levy?
I'm going to have another slide coming up right here. Maybe it answers part of your question. Property taxes is about 70% of what funds your operational costs. We do have some intergovernmental aid, and if you read the newspapers, you probably realize that state aid to local communities is not growing at tremendous leaps and bounds. It's been pretty flat or even declining in many cases, so there's really no other supplement to that. There are some fees and fines and permits, charges for services that come in for things, if you're getting a building permit, if you're making a specific use of a special collection pickup at the curbside because you've taken a couple old couches out of the basement. Those are charged only to the people who receive those services, not then the general taxes. But the general taxes are about 70%, and that's been a pretty steady number over time, within a couple percentage points. So predominantly the services that we receive are funded by property taxes.
And what does intergovernmental mean?
That'd be state aid for state transportation aid, shared revenues, things of that nature.
Would there be any federal in that or no?
Not of any consequence, no.
We didn't get federal funds to help with the Atwater beautification, the Atwater beach. I thought we got federal funds for that or not.
That would be, this is a general fund that we're on right now for operations. That would have been considered a capital improvement. So I think I recall some historical reference to some of those numbers. This was a little before I started, but in the general fund, kind of mimics what Becky was saying about government services. We've got our Public Works Division, who's got the entire half of the page there with all the things that they do and provide services for in the community. Street and alley maintenance, winter maintenance, snow removal this time of year, refuse disposal, recycling services, yard waste, the whole gamut. And although that's not in the general fund, they also run our water and sewer utility operations and maintenance and repairs, as well as all the infrastructure, the building projects that are going on in the community. So they're busy folks. Public safety, of course, police, fire, and dispatch. Those are paid for through property taxes. And then your general government services, your village board, municipal court, village manager, clerk, customer service, elections, finance, our village attorney, IT services, assessing services, stuff that happens largely in this building, behind the scenes, not necessarily out in the community. Those are called general government services. The next slide I've got one coming up showing how those spread out. This slide here talks about in the general fund, what are your expenditures going to? Where are we spending our money? And the top three lines are your staff, personnel, salaries, and wages, benefits, and then the third line is called other governments, but that's really your North Shore Fire Department, which, if they were here, would be salaries and wages. So it's very labor-intensive, staff-intensive, people doing work for the community. If you add those top three lines up, I think I did that earlier, it was like 77% of expenditures are tied up in direct staff costs. Contractual payments, another 8%. Professional fees, insurance, utilities, supplies, and other. So when you're looking to find money, you're talking about trade-offs, and that largely means cutting staff positions. So when you cut staff positions, you're taking people out in the community doing all the services that probably most people would like to see more services provided, more frequently, more options. So that's really the challenge as we build our budget, is trying to, and it's right on the bottom there, I took this right out of one of our presentations to the village board, because that's how we build our budget. It's to create a budget that maintains or exceeds the service levels and expectations set forth by the village board, the vision plan. A number of iterations of that are quoted here for the board's benefit, but you know, it's really not always about figuring out a dollar amount. It's what does it take to provide the services that the community expects, and the board demands that staff provide to the community.
What does fringe benefit mean? What's an example of a fringe benefit?
Health insurance, dental insurance, pension payments.
Thank you.
Quick question on the revenue side.
Yeah.
In Wisconsin, can a village levy a sales tax?
No, not right now. It's one of those things that spins in the background but never seems to take flight, because I mean, you can imagine trying to do that throughout the state with all the implementation challenges of that. But you never know what's coming on down the road.
But like Milwaukee have a sales tax.
The county has
County, yeah, the 5.6 and
0.5% or something
Yeah.
of that nature.
And so would like FICA and Social Security be under part of the wages and salaries, or is that considered fringe?
Well, that's employment taxes, so that's fringe benefits, yeah.
What might some examples of the contractual payments, the big ones, who do we contract with?
How much money is it?
About $1 million?
We have fees for our assessor, about $80,000 a year. We have fees for IT network support that are not direct. We don't employ an IT staff person here because we don't quite have enough work to demand a full-time position, so we contract out for that. We contract out for some engineering personnel. Our village attorney is not an employee. He's paid for under contractual services. So those types of professional type. Again, alternate government units, they may be all employees in bigger organizations because they have enough work to keep people full. But again, you know, when you look to cut, you've got some limited options. But I always find it interesting to share this type of information, because I think everybody's goal is not to raise taxes at all. But you want to maintain your service levels. So it's a real challenge to find ways to do both. And you know, the best we've been able to do so far is to keep slow and steady, and you know, 1.89% over the last 10 years certainly fits that mold. Here's what I was thinking about before: our expenditures by service area. So we're talking about $11.6 million of general fund expenditures. Now that's not necessarily all tax revenue. This is everything we spend. That includes some money that comes in from fines and charges for services and intergovernmental revenue, but this is money going out the door. 33% of that goes to police and court. 26% of that goes to other public safety, which by and large is the fire department and the shared dispatch system. A small component of that is crossing guards for the crosswalks, and lifeguards or security down at the beach in the summer. It's all public safety related. Public Works is 23%, and we covered all the various things that they accomplished. And again, this is in the general fund. General government, that was all those administrative services in Village Hall. Planning is building inspectors and the courts. And then our health department and other is really just a budgetary other financing sources where we support transfer of some reserves to help stabilize our debt service costs. So again, very big chunks of the pie are committed to very predominantly high-profile services in the community. So again, that's a constant balancing act between all those factors and trying to provide both the services and keep the costs under control because taxes are high. Another way we try to express things, both for the benefit of our trustees and just general publications, is to put things in the context of like a monthly utility bill, like your cable bill, if you would. So the metric that the village uses for your average household unit is about $300,000 of value. And the average house pays about $192 a month for municipal services. And then we break that down between all the various types of services you get, the police department, fire services, all your public works functions. Debt service is what pays for a lot of the road and construction projects you've seen, particularly over the last 10 years. The library, again, general government, other capital projects, purchases of vehicles, heavy equipment for public works, health services, and then the other services, which is our senior resource center. So we like this because it really tries to put in context that when you get one bill a year and it's for everything, it's a very large number. But if you, again, try looking at it in this context, we'd like to think we're trying to provide service at a value price compared to other things that you might do on a monthly basis. So we've developed this chart to kind of illustrate that concept for a little better frame of reference and talking about $11 million budgets. Debt service fund is, again, what pays for our construction projects. In the last 10 years, we've had over $23 million of construction projects and roads and facilities, parks improvements, the tax levy, your property tax bill, supports those services through repaying the bonds and the debt that's been issued to pay for the full cost of those projects up front, but yet the repayment of that is typically over a 20-year period during what we call the life of the project. And when you build a new road, people will be driving on for the next 20 years, are the people in the community in those 20 years. Those are the people who are making those payments to those bonds that pay for those projects, as opposed to somebody today having to pay the full cost of it. They move out of the community in 5 years. Somebody else comes in and then they never have to pay a portion of that. So that's one of the reasons that bonds are very popular, because they're paid back over the life of these projects. So the people living in the community that get the benefits of those actually are the ones who will pay the cost of that, and not, another term's called not intergenerational equity, inter-period equity. It's the same concept again. You should pay for what you're using along the way when it's being used. Little metric on the bottom, kind of a behind-the-scenes number. You get $1 million of projects done today at an average cost of $80,000 per year for the next 20 years. So certainly there's cost to borrowing in that interest, but hopefully wages are going up over time, and part of that interest is balanced out and adjusted against your general inflationary cost increases, and not quite as expensive as you do when you do the big math. You borrow $1 million, you pay back $1.6 million. Well, over 20 years, yes. The other part of of debt service is, and that's a bigger 62%. And that's funded from our TIF districts. These are the big projects, the whole Capitol Drive resurfacing project back in 2010. All the various community improvements that were done within the TIF district, which is basically the business corridor up and down Capitol Drive, up and down Oakland. Some incentives along the way in the last 10 to 15 years to make some of these larger scale new developments, Oakland and Capitol, economically feasible, as a lot of times it involves tearing down old properties. We're not building on vacant land here. You get Historical Society to show how long the community's been intact, so when you have to tear down old properties to get something that fits into the community, a lot of times you're asking for more than what would make economic sense for somebody to just come in and do it on their own. So there's been some incentives provided